Got a cloud computing exam on the horizon? Well, you've come to the right place. We're about to cram a whole university course into the next few minutes, hitting all the key concepts you absolutely have to know. Ready? Let's do this.
So, when you hear the term the cloud, what comes to mind? Something technical, maybe a little abstract? Well, I'm willing to bet it's way more familiar than you think. In fact, you've probably already used it like 5 times just this morning. Seriously, how? Let's check it out.
Yep, there it is. Checking your email on Gmail, watching a movie on Netflix, even just saving a photo to Google Drive. Every single one of those actions is you tapping directly into the cloud. It's pretty much the invisible engine that runs our entire digital world. So, you know what? Let's pull back that curtain and figure out what's really going on under the hood.
Okay, so what is it really? The simplest way to think about it is this. Cloud computing is just delivering computer services, servers, storage, you name it, over the internet. And here's the killer concept, the one you really need to remember. You're renting the computing power, not buying it. That's a huge deal. It's a complete flip from the old days of having to buy and manage your own giant, expensive servers.
All right, to really get a grip on the cloud, we've got to look at how it's built. It's made up of 3 main layers. In your textbooks and exams, you'll hear this called the cloud computing stack. So let's break that stack down, piece by piece.
You know, a good way to picture these 3 service models is like a pyramid. It's all about control. The higher up you go on the pyramid, the more the cloud provider manages for you. At the very top, they handle pretty much everything. And these layers have names you'll see everywhere: infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. Let's dive into what each of those actually means.
Okay, let's start at the top of that pyramid with SaaS, which stands for Software as a Service. This is the one you already know and use every single day. It's just ready-to-go software that you access online. You just log in and start using it. You don't worry about updates, security, any of that back-end stuff. The provider handles it all. Think Gmail, think Office 365. That's SaaS.
All right, moving down a layer, we get to PaaS, or Platform as a Service. Now this one is for the builders, the developers. It gives them a ready-made platform to build, test, and run their apps without ever having to think about the servers or operating systems underneath. And that's a game changer, right? It means they can just focus on writing amazing code, which is why we see new apps and features coming out so fast these days.
And that brings us to the very foundation of our pyramid, IaaS, or Infrastructure as a Service. This is where you get the most control, the most power. You're basically renting the raw building blocks of a data center: virtual servers, storage, networking, the whole shebang. With IaaS, you're the one in charge of the operating system and all the software you install on it.
So this all sounds great, but how does it actually work? How can one company rent out bits and pieces of its computers to thousands of different people all at the same time so efficiently? Well, the answer is a single magical-sounding technology that is, without a doubt, the true engine of the cloud. And that technology is virtualization.
And this leads us to a classic exam question. Seriously, this thing pops up year after year. The question is, how does one single physical computer pretend to be many different computers? How can one giant machine act like hundreds or even thousands of separate little computers all at once? And the one-word answer to that question is virtualization. It's the technology that lets you take one big, powerful physical server and slice it up into a bunch of smaller, completely separate virtual machines, or VMs. Imagine slicing a pizza. Each VM gets its own slice of the computer's processor, its memory, its storage, and it runs like it's its own little computer, totally unaware of the others. That is the absolute secret sauce of the cloud.
So what's doing all this slicing and managing? That would be a special piece of software called a hypervisor. The best way to think of it is as a traffic cop. It stands on the physical hardware and directs everything, creating and managing all the virtual machines, making sure each one gets the resources it was promised without bumping into the others. Seriously, if you want to pass your exam, you have to know what a hypervisor is.
Okay, you want to level up and really nail this on an exam? You should know there are actually 2 types of hypervisors. The first is Type 1, or bare metal. It runs right on the physical hardware, which makes it super fast and secure. This is what the big cloud providers use. Then there's Type 2. This one runs on top of an operating system, kind of like when you install an app on your laptop. It's way easier to set up, but not nearly as efficient.
Okay, deep breath. We've just covered how the cloud works, right? The magic of virtualization. Now let's switch gears and talk about where the cloud lives. This gets us into what are called deployment models, and it's really all about a simple question: who owns and manages the stuff?
And there are really 4 main flavors to choose from. First, you've got the public cloud. Think Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. It's owned by a provider and open for anyone to use. Then there's the private cloud, which is built exclusively for one single organization. They get total control. A hybrid cloud, as you can probably guess, is just a mix of both, giving you the best of both worlds. And finally, there's a community cloud, which is kind of cool. It's shared by a few organizations that have the same needs, like a bunch of government agencies or universities.
Now, obviously, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The cloud has its own set of real challenges and risks, and you can bet that your exams are going to hit these topics hard because they want to see that you have a well-rounded view of how this stuff works in the real world.
So what are the big worries? Well, the top ones are probably what you'd guess. Security and privacy are a huge deal, right? I mean, your data is sitting on someone else's computer. Then there's vendor lock-in, which is this tricky situation where it becomes really hard to move from one cloud provider to another. Oh, and cost. If you're not careful, those pay-as-you-go bills can get out of control fast. And of course, you always have to worry about potential downtime and making sure you're following all the legal rules.
So, let's wrap this all up with a nice, clean definition that's perfect for a summary on an exam. Here it is. Cloud computing provides on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable IT resources that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort. Phew! But what does that really mean? The keywords there are on-demand, shared, and rapid. It's all about speed, flexibility, and efficiency. That's the core value proposition.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here. We've gone from the 3 layers of the cloud stack all the way down to the magic of virtualization that makes it all possible. It's pretty clear the cloud powers just about everything in our modern world, which leaves us with one last pretty big question to think about. In a world that runs almost entirely on rented infrastructure, who's really holding all the power?